and
remembering.
Yeah.
He said, "Do this in remembrance of me." But to have to go kill a lamb and baking the bread without the yeast in it, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
He left the prime example for us in the Last Supper.
Yes. And this covenant, this thing of covenant, where they're saying, okay, but he didn't really give us another covenant. He renewed the covenant. But the only problem with that is the Father said that if either party broke the covenant was null and void. So how many different times did we break the covenant? So God didn't break the covenant now. When he said it was everlasting, he meant it. But he said if either party breaks it, then it's null and void. So these covenants that we did, they were null and void. That's why Yeshua had to come and give us a new and everlasting covenant, and he did it as a man. That way the covenant being broken didn't depend on us no more. It was on him, so it could never be null and void. Mm-hmm. Even if we broke it, it would be not null and void, because he, as both God and man, did it with his blood. You understand what I'm saying? Because whenever Abraham or any of them cut a covenant with the Father, they would present the blood of the animals in place of their blood, and then the Father would walk in between the animals, where the blood of Yeshua, as the Son of Man, was the blood that the Father looked at and said, that blood is pure, and it's also from that which is divine. Therefore, this covenant is everlasting, whether or not it's better, it's stronger. And this was said in the old, what we call the Old Testament, by the prophets like Jeremiah. Here in Jeremiah 31 and 31, this is what it says about the new covenant. He said, behold, the days cometh, saith the Lord, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they break, although I was a husband unto them, saith the Lord. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house. So when he said that, he said, okay, that covenant that I had before, they break it, so it ain't no good. So I gotta bring another one, because that's why verse 33 says, but this covenant, meaning it's not the former covenant, like some people were trying to say, like the former covenant of keeping the feast and all that stuff. He said, no, this is the covenant that I'm going to make with them, with the house of Israel. After those days, saith the Lord, I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts. And I will be their God, and they shall be my people. This is what Yeshua came and did when he died on the tree. Mm-hmm. He said, if you accept his sacrifice and you were born again, you're a new creature. And then the Holy Spirit comes in to you, and according to the book of Ezekiel, which said that he would write his laws on your heart. That's what happened. That does not say that we would take and we had a lesson on this when we was talking about the Ten Commandments, where it's not evil if you want to go and read them and place them up in your house and everything. That's good, but you reading them and knowing them is not going to help you keeping them. What's going to help you to keep them is being born again, when he write them on your heart. And you don't even have to really know him, because when he put the love of himself in you, the love of the Father in you is going to make you not want to do these things. This is the point that Paul brings out in Galatians. Now, we also we taught a lesson some months ago where we talked about, actually it was last year, where we said that the bringing of grace was to shield us as the Hebrews that left out from Judah after it fell, after the temple fell, because Yeshua knew, man, he ain't gonna be able to keep some of these things that's on this list of commandments on the wall. You're not gonna be able to do the Sabbath days and all these things, because the people that's gonna enslave you, they ain't gonna make it. They're gonna take a lot of that knowledge and stuff away from you. They're gonna make it where you're gonna be enslaved. You're gonna be killed. You're gonna and you're gonna be given a whole different thing. But the grace of the Most High through His Son Yeshua, once we came into knowledge of it, covered us and kept us from getting totally annihilated. Because if the covenant had not been done by Yeshua, then Father could just say, you know what, I'm just going to take them and just totally annihilate them. But when Yeshua was on the cross, what did He pray before He died? He said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He wasn't just praying for those people of our nation that was there then. He was praying for us in the future, when He knew we was going to be in lands where we didn't even know that we were the people, when we was eating pork and we was eating all this other kind of crazy stuff, when they gave us a slave Bible that didn't have all the stuff in it, but somehow our people was able to reach God and all these everything. He was looking into the future, because the covenant that He instituted was more powerful than the one that was before, right? Let's go on here to verse 34. He said, they shall teach no more every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, know the Lord, for they shall know me, from the least of them unto the greatest of them, saith the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity and remember their sin no more, right? So in the end He said, for thus saith the Lord, which giveth the sun for a day, a light by day, and the ordinance of the moon and of the stars for a light by night, which divideth the sea when the waves thereof roar. The Lord of hosts is His name. If those ordinances depart from before me, saith the Lord, then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a nation before me forever. Thus saith the Lord, if heaven above can be measured, and the foundations of the earth stretched out beneath, I will also cast off all the seed of Israel from all that they have done, saith the Lord. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that the city shall be built to the Lord from the tower of Hinanel unto the gate of the corner, and the measuring line shall go forth over against it upon Garab, and shall compass about Gothath, and the whole valley of the dead bodies and of the ashes, and all the fields unto the brook of Kidron, unto the corner of the horse gate toward the east, shall be holy unto the Lord. It shall not be plucked up nor thrown down any more forever. So notice He's saying all this would be stuff that was going to happen after the new covenant. And notice what He's saying, if I would cast them away forever. So he was foreshadowing that He knew that after this new covenant was going to be given, that we was going to be cast out. We was going to be cast out from the land. But because of the new covenant that Yeshua did and what He had told the disciples, He said, go and preach this message unto all the world, right? He said, start in Jerusalem and then go to Samaria and then go to the uttermost parts of the world. And Paul then picked it up. He said, we preach to the Jew first and then to the Gentile. But then what happened? This is the part that now has to be finished. It was all complete. It was all finished on the cross, but it was not all completed. What was not completed was the acceptance of the Israel and Judah of the new covenant. As a nation, as individuals, we have received it. Paul even picked it up, and we're going to read it in Romans, where he said, even now there's a set election of my people that received Yeshua, but as a nation we rejected it. So that rejection caused the temple to be destroyed in 70 AD and to be scattered. But because of the new covenant that He had cut and it was finished but not completed, He didn't let us get totally wiped out. It was because of that he didn't let us get wiped out. Why? Because we had to be able to hear as individuals the covenant, the new covenant, which is believe on Yeshua and the sacrifice that he made and be saved and receive the gift of the Holy Ghost, which Peter preached on the day of Pentecost, and they received. He said, this promise is for you first. Now, he believed it was just for them, but then God showed him that it was also for those that heard and believed, because it was going to be by faith. Because once the temple was going to be destroyed in 70 AD and they was going to be scattered out into other lands, we was going to be living like pagans. We was going to be living with knowledge that, without knowledge that we was even the people. That's why when we got saved and we had the picture of the white Jesus and everything, whatever, most average people, this is just the truth, the most average people that will be conquered and whatever, and will be presented with a God or a Savior that would be a different, the same complexion of those that was raping them, killing them and all that, they would reject it. But we received it not because the picture of Jesus was white and all this, but because we are those people, and he said we are the natural branches. He said it's easier for the natural branches to be grafted back into the olive tree because we came from, or at least our ancestors came from that olive tree. So we was able to receive Yeshua even when they was doing this wicked stuff, because we wasn't receiving them. We were receiving what we have rejected, our forefathers had rejected. Now we as a nation have to, once again, when this thing of us going into the wilderness, come together and as a nation receive. Because what did they say when Pilate said, do you want Barabbas or you want Yeshua? Our forefathers said they want Barabbas. So now that opportunity must be given to us again as a nation to receive him, not as individuals for salvation, but as a nation to save us. Because notice this, Christian, non-Christian, whoever you are as a black person, all this stuff that's happening in America is affecting you. So you go to somebody and say, well, I'm Christian or whatever, but you look at your skin color or whatever, when they know who you are, that ain't going, as a nation, not talking about your salvation, you ain't safe. You are not. Because we are people without a nation, a place of our own. So now, in order for us to get a place of our own as a nation, we have to receive that offer that Yeshua made to our forefathers, and this time we got to accept it. But the acceptance of it means we got to reject the stuff of the nations that he bring us out. Meaning we can't bring the stuff of America into the place where we going. We can't receive Yeshua bringing the stuff from Brazil and Mexico and Pakistan and India and all the places that we were scattered and dispersed. We got to come as we are and let him change us, because the Bible said that, you know, he's going to put us under the rod. Mm-hmm. So now let's go to Hebrews, and we're going to show you why it's incumbent for us to acknowledge that this is the new covenant, and that now we understand that Yeshua is the centerpiece of this, not the feast days. See, there is now a concentration back on these days when he that finished the feast is what needs to be concentrated on. Our people need to know about Yeshua, not the white Caesar Borgia, not the little black man, whatever that they got, whatever, but the word, what the word say about him. We need that. We need to put our hope in that. That's what's going to prepare us to go back to wherever it is that he wants us to go back, not knowing the feast day, because the Bible clearly says he's going to give us restore to us a pure language. He's going to give us a name that we never had before. And who's to say that all these different things that you celebrating, that they would be done the same way when he take us to where we're going. So you sitting here practicing all these different feasts and everybody doing them different ways, everybody using different languages. Some people are actually killing lambs and all this other stuff. Who would say when he come, he ain't gonna do none of that? So you wasting our time when we need to learn Christ and him crucified. That's what we need to learn. You want to use as my wife said, teach the things, not do them, of what these things meant and what Christ, Yeshua, did on this earth. Then do that, but don't say, okay, people, we gotta go out here and we gotta actually do this, and then this creates the same thing that happened in Galatians, where Paul said, you putting your hope in all these things, Christ's death and resurrection is of none effect. And that's what's happening. You're making that, whether you want to believe it or not, you're making the power of Yeshua of none effect, by just like with us when we was in the Christian church, telling people keep Christmas, keep Easter, and then when we found out what fall, we threw them out. But then now you're gonna come and do this, you reversing. Let's be done with it. Oh, he said it's finished. The work on the cross finished it all, right?
Amen.
So let's go to Hebrews 8 and 7. This is what Hebrews 8 and 7. This is clearly talking about what Jeremiah talked about back in Jeremiah 31 about the new covenant. He said, 8 and 7 said, for if the first covenant had been faultless, and before I go any further, the writer of Hebrews is basically verbatim saying the same thing that Jeremiah stated, but I'm going to read it so that you will know for yourself what he was saying, so that you'll understand that the covenant that we're in now is not the covenant that Moses received on Mount Horeb or Mount Sinai or whatever, with the feast and all these things. This is the new covenant in Yeshua. He said, for if the first covenant had been faultless, meaning it was not without fault, then should no place have been sought for the second. It was fault in it. It was fault in the new covenant. He clearly says it. Because what? It was not able to empower the people to be able to keep all of the stuff. They was not empowered to do. Not that it was evil what he was asking them to do. It's just that the law did not have power to help them to keep it. Mm-hmm. Okay, verse 8, he said, for finding fault with them, he said, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah, which goes back to what we were saying when Yeshua, when Pilate said, who do you want, Christ or Barabbas? Our forefathers said Barabbas. But notice this, that was the nation of Judah. The nation of Israel had already been scattered out when the northern tribes had been taken captive by Assyria, and they had been scattered onto the known parts of the world at that time. So this is why I said the only part that you can say of it is finished, that is not complete, is finished, is that we as Israel and as Judah, when the two sticks come together, have to accept what Yeshua offered us as a nation in the wilderness, when the Bible said he's going to bring us into the wilderness of the people. But we're going to read that later. He said, verse 9, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, said the Lord. Which means, because they broke it, he said he didn't regard them no more. He didn't regard them. So the covenant, because it was imperfect in the fact that it could not empower them to keep it, it was of none effect no more. So if you going back to it again, you're going back to something that is of none effect. He said it right here. He said, I didn't regard them no more after they broke the covenant. Right here. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws in their mind and write them in their hearts. And I will be to them a God, and they shall be my people. They shall not teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, know the Lord. For all shall know me, from the least to the greatest. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness and their sins and their iniquities will I remember no more. Why was he saying this? Because we was going to be scattered out of the land. We was going to be scattered all over the world, and we was going to get caught up in pagan stuff. We was going to lose our name. We was going to, but y'all would never let us just get totally wiped out. Because why? Yeshua said on the cross, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And because the covenant that he made was an everlasting covenant, there was no holes in it. So it was going to cover us. And also the fact that it was a lot of our people back then that was believers in Yeshua. It was a lot of them. But as a nation, they rejected it. So he had to kick us out of the land. He had to destroy the temple. He had to let all these things go away from us because we was too ingrained in the first covenant. That was no good. The second covenant we was rejecting, so he had to let it fade on away and let us fade on away too until he could start bringing us back in together. And as individuals, we believe. But then the enemy, what he did when he seen us come together cohesively to try to come, he would divide us up. So then we got divided up into Islam, Christianity, and Buddha, and all these other kind of different things. Mm-hmm. But he's drawing us.
Yeshua is waiting for us to love him with our whole heart, soul, and mind. Mm-hmm. That is one of the commandments.
Yes.
If you want to remember anything about the commandment, remember what he said. We have to love him with our whole soul and mind.
Yes.
As a whole. We need the wholeness of Yeshua.
Yeah.
We've been doing things in partiality.
Yes.
And he wants us to come together as a whole.
As a whole.
And not divided.
Yes.
Not some doing and some not doing. But as a nation, as a whole. Love him with our whole
heart, mind, body, and
soul.
Yes. And verse 13 said, and that he said, a new covenant he has made the first old. So he's saying the first covenant is old. It's outdated. You going back to it is outdated. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. That's what happened when the temple was destroyed in 70 AD. You couldn't keep none of that stuff. Now, that's the difference between the 10 commandments. Now, we understand they were written in stone. But all those other ordinances and the laws or whatever, the ceremonial stuff, not the moral stuff. The moral stuff is still good of sexual purity and all that stuff. But again, the keeping of it, we couldn't keep because the law couldn't empower you to keep it. Yeshua, that's why he came. He said, not one jot or one tittle of the law shall be thrown away until heaven, of the moral part. Yes. The moral, not the ceremonial. The ceremonial was finished. Mm-hmm. Some of the things dealing with the dress was finished because we was going to be going into places where we could not do that. Right. It wasn't, in many cases we forgot and was who we are, and our heritage was lost to us. But the moral law and the preaching of the Basar of the gospel was there, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's what he wanted us to concentrate on. And notice this again, if this is not proof enough, again, that it was a new covenant. If you go to Hebrews 10 and 16, this is what it said. He said, this is the covenant that I will make with them after those days, said the Lord. I will put my laws in their hearts, and in their minds will I write it. So he's saying it again. Whenever y'all said something 1 or 2 times, 2 to 3 times, he wants you to remember it. So he's trying to let you know that all you that are trying to state your righteousness on the first covenant by literally keeping these feasts, you keeping hope in something that he said vanished away when that temple went away, when that temple was destroyed. You putting it, and for you believers that are in the Christian church that are keeping your hope in Christmas and Easter and Halloween and all these past holidays and all that stuff, you in the same boat. It's no power in that. It never has been any power in that. It's finished. He said it's finished. It's done away with. And your church bylaws, all your church bylaws, all your church rules and dress codes and all this stuff, it's finished. It's finished. If you're not born again, it don't matter what kind of church bylaws you get a person to do. They're going to do what they want to do. If they haven't been born again, it don't matter. It don't matter. Your fast, your Tuesday and Thursday fast that you implement religiously, or go and make pilgrimage to shrines and all, it's finished. It was finished on the stake. All of that. Yes. Right? Let's go to Hebrews 13 and 20. He said, now the God of peace that brought again from the dead our Lord Jesus, that great shepherd of the sheep, through the blood of the everlasting covenant, make you perfect in every good work to do his will, working in you that which is well pleasing in his sight, through Jesus Christ, to whom be glory forever and ever. Amen. So this is why the new covenant is better, because the results of it is not dependent upon you keeping feast days or keeping Christmas. It's dependent on Yah's Son through the blood of the everlasting covenant. That's why it's power in the blood. Oh yeah. There's power in that blood to change your heart to want to do right. Not through you keeping it. Now understand, it's history. We don't reject history. We don't reject the history of what the Passover means. We don't reject that, obviously, because if we talking about a second Exodus here, we know we need to know what that second Exodus meant, and we know part of the second Exodus was the Passover. But it's not. It's good to understand these types and shadows. But that's what they are. They shadows of stuff that's passed on. There is no power in you doing them. If you want to reenact them, to say, we just want to see how it felt when they did it, good. But the problem with us is we will draw strength from that and believe that gives us some kind of special more power than somebody that didn't do it. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem. When Yeshua said, it is finished. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, what you were saying was true. He wants us to be able to remember, do those things in remembrance of him. But he already had finished the work.
Yes.
So that's why he just required the bread and the wine.
Yeah.
To do it.
I think I talked about that before, where I said, for me, I'm just talking about for me. I'm not putting this on anybody else. I believe the things that the Father wants us to do is what Paul stated in Corinthians, where they had the European church named it the Lord's Supper. Mm-hmm. It really was part of the Passover. It was that part. But what Yeshua did when he said, now the Passover, which was a foreshadow of me, now I'm going to finish this. And this part of the Passover, I need you to do this part. Mm. And when you do it, you do show forth my death. That's it. That and baptism in water. Now, there's we used to be part of the church that said you had to do feet washing too. I don't adhere to that no more, not because it's bad, but because actually, if you look at that part where Yeshua or Jesus washed the feet of his disciples, that was dealing with the Passover, with the washing of and more of a custom too, because back then, because they had sandals, whenever they got in a room, they did feet washing all the time. If you was you wouldn't be a good guest if somebody came in off the road. And even today, I think they do it still in some Middle East countries. You wouldn't be a good guest if when your guest came in, his feet was dirty and everything, that you didn't wash his feet. You wouldn't. You wouldn't be a good host, like my wife said, if you didn't. So it's not so much a thing that, oh, you got to do this because whatever. Some people say, let's do it because he said, you know, if I don't wash your feet, you don't have no part of me. But what he was trying to show Peter was humility. It was more of a thing of humility. I'd rather a person to be humble, you know, show humility through the way they act than what them just washing somebody's feet. You know what I'm saying? Because that ain't always feasible. Mm-hmm. And some people just ain't down with that. And that's just be humble. We don't have to go through all of that. If you part of the people that do it and y'all don't have no problem, hey, I do it. But I don't believe that it's a quote unquote ordinance that he commanded us to keep. My understanding is the baptism in water, where you went down in the water and you came up, the doing the body and bread. Yep. And hey, that's it. Simple, like my wife said. Mm-hmm. And because what do you remember in Acts that it said about the disciples when they said, hey, you need to wait on these tables and collect this money? They said, we ain't gonna waste our time dealing with taking up money and everything. We must give ourselves to the ministry of the word and prayer. We gotta read and pray. That's what we supposed to do. We supposed to pray and study. We do supposed to come together. And the Bible said, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst. But what happened with man is they make these stipulations where they say, okay, well, you got to have this, that, this. And this is where the Bible said you got to have, what you name me one church that you've been in where you had an apostle, an evangelist, an elder and all that. You haven't. So when people say, well, you got to have a pastor that's over you or whatever. 1 John said, it's an ideal that you would, there's no problem with that. But the Bible also said it will come a day when there will be a famine for the word of God or whatever. And 1 John said, you have an unction from the Holy Spirit and you have no need that any man teach you. If they ain't around, he'll lead you. And he'll also lead and guide you into all truth. Because what happened is our people have been gravitating to people that say, you gotta be under the shepherd, be under me and all these other things. They put themselves and they appoint themselves people over them, and then they make these oaths and stuff, and then it's not right, and then they get caught up in a situation where they're not growing or whatever. I believe that y'all gonna bring you into fellowship with who you need, and that he gonna bring people, because notice in Ephesians, the gifts are not offices, they're gifts. So sometimes you have people around you that have the gift of being a shepherd, but it's not a formal shepherding of you. It might be a person that you go to for spiritual advice. So you're saying, no, you got to have a person that's sitting in the office of a pastor, in a building and all that, as opposed to a person that has a gift of shepherding that's helping you along in your spiritual growth. See, it's all about, let me collect this little group of people to myself. I might not even have the gift of shepherding, but I call myself a shepherd, a pastor, and I can do what these people I want to, as opposed to you not being part of a quote unquote church building, but you got a person that's shepherding you along the way, that has that shepherding gift. You understand what I'm saying? This is the kind of things that me and my wife have seen real quickly, because we want to wrap this up. And I know I've been a little long, but we just wanted to state, this because of all these different holidays and feast days that's coming up, to not let yourself get caught up in this stuff, right? Especially because we're in a short hour. But this is Romans 11 and 22. 3. And this is the part where I was talking about as a nation, the work that Yeshua did for us was finished, but not complete. It's not complete because when he made the offer to us as a nation, we rejected it. So when he pulls us back, we have to, as a nation, say, yes, we want you to be our king and our redeemer like he wanted to. But individually, we can be, we supposed to still have a belief in Yeshua. This is Romans 11:23 said, they also, if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in, for God is able to graft them in again. This is Paul talking in the book of Romans to the Gentile believers in Rome, saying these, even though Yah is blinding his people, that doesn't mean that as individuals, they can't be grafted in, because just like he said, if they don't abide in unbelief, they can be grafted back in again. He said, for verse 22, for if thou were cut out of the olive branch, which is wild by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature into a good olive tree, how much more shall these, which be natural olive branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? So he was trying to tell the Gentiles, you was cut out of a wild olive tree that was not part of the good olive tree. They was broken off the good olive tree. So who you think when you graft the branch back into is the branch? Which branch is going to take to the olive tree better, the wild olive branch or the branch that was broken off but then grafted back in? Of course, the olive branch that was from the